Welcome to the Did Nothing Wrong podcast, where we do our best to cut through the noise and help you to make sense of the chaotic information space around us. I'm Griff.
And I'm Jay McKenzie.
Time magazine is out with their annual Person of the Year award, and this year it went to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, the former comedian and actor who went from playing the role of the president on television to actually becoming the president, who has managed to capture the attention of the world with his bravery and charisma in the face of Russia's invasion of his country. We were pretty skeptical about him, but he's proved us wrong, as well as a lot of others. We'll also be talking about Elon Musk's latest Twitter amnesty decisions, including the disgraced GOP advisor and Trump pardon recipient, Roger Stone. It seems like he's bound and determined to party like it's 2016 again. And in happier news, it was a bad week for gangsters of all kinds, including Andrei Derkach, the Treasury Department-sanctioned friend of Rudy Giuliani and active Russian agent per the U.S. Department of Justice. You may remember Derkach from his attempts to influence the 2020 election, including his promotion of a supposed second laptop. Derkach caught another case recently, this time for money laundering, which in this case means purchasing property in Beverly Hills, California. We'll discuss why all of these people want to be here rather than at home in Mother Russia. It's going to be a great show, folks. Thanks for tuning in. So, Jay, Time is out with their Person of the Year, and while the recipient isn't really a surprise, the fact that he did the job that he did certainly was. Volodymyr Zelenskyy was named Person of the Year this past week. The move is not so much of a shock today, but it could certainly not have been predicted less than a year ago, before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine began in February. Prior to this, U.S. intelligence had repeatedly warned Zelenskyy that Russia's latest buildup on the border of Ukraine wasn't an empty threat. They told him that Putin was really making plans to invade his country. Zelenskyy brushed this off for a while, downplayed the threat of invasion, and then it came. And rather than flee, as a lot of Western governments seemed to encourage him to do, Zelenskyy stayed with his countrymen. And not only did Ukraine halt the Russian advances, they've actually turned the tide in the war. And we were both pretty skeptical of this guy for a while. Do you think he deserves this?
I think he does. And yeah, credit where it's due, because when U.S. intelligence really came out and said that this looks like it's going to happen, Russia's probably going to invade, or at least they're making real plans and you should act accordingly, you got the sense that either Zelenskyy was listening to the wrong people, or he just wanted to believe so much, or he thought that if he really did raise the alarm, that would somehow halt the possibility of negotiations with Russia. Maybe he was downplaying it because he thought that was the only way to get Putin to the negotiating table. I'm not entirely sure what his thoughts were, but it was a little maddening to see it. And I think you and I were both following it day to day.
Yeah, definitely.
And there were more and more troops that were coming up to the border, and you started seeing helicopters, you started seeing medic tents, you started seeing food and supplies that were being sent and were being tracked, that were being sent to the Russia-Ukraine border. So there was more and more reason to think, well, they wouldn't be doing this, so we wouldn't be going to these lengths if they really were just going to pack up and leave tomorrow. And yet Zelenskyy kept downplaying it. And I don't know that he had some sort of grand 4D chess sort of plan around it, but I think he was hopeful that it wouldn't go to war. And when it did happen, when the Russians did invade and troops came across the border, I think most people, including U.S. intelligence, who had been tracking this and watching this and were as up to date on the information as everyone, were telling him then, you should go. You should leave Kyiv. Could fall in a matter of days. And I think that was a logical conclusion to draw.
Yeah, very much.
There's every reason to think that was going to happen. I think for the last 10 years or so, there's been a lot of news about how Russia's military had advanced and modernized, and they were really not caught up with NATO, but they were taking some steps that were concerning and looking like a real,
like they had gotten serious.
Yeah, like they had gotten serious. And it wasn't even, this is going to be a serious problem for Ukraine. It was, this is going to be a problem for the Baltic states. This is going to be a problem for Poland, which has taken considerable steps to shore up their defenses, because the Poles do not like the Russians and they understand the threat as much as anyone. They've been sounding the alarm. They've been pressing the Germans, who have refused to meet their 2% NATO requirement for years and years. And the Poles were sitting there saying, hey, this is bad. And not only do the Russians have nukes, but they're actually getting better. So when that invasion of Ukraine happened, most people, most knowledgeable experts were saying, oh God.
Yeah, the Ukrainians are screwed.
Yeah.
I mean, Poland was so aware of this threat that they were proposing to build a Fort Trump on their territory. They wanted U.S. troops in it so bad that they're like, we'll name it after Donald. We don't care. We want the security of this. And
who can blame them?
No, not at all. I mean, after watching this, it's really puts the lie to the concept of Russophobia. You're kind of like, well, of course they're scared. Look what happens when you live next door to these guys. They might invade you. However, it seems that the Ukrainians definitely had this as scouted as it's really possible to have. The initial Russian advance at the airport didn't work. They were able to repel that. And Zelenskyy shot that video when the rumors hit. Remember that? The rumors hit that Zelenskyy had left. So he got his cabinet together and they're all out in the street looking like Ukrainian Wu-Tang Clan, all like hard up there. The president is here. This guy is here. You know, it's like, we ain't going anywhere. And I think a lot of people, not just in Ukraine, but in the West, kind of got inspired. It's like, here's these people that nobody gave a chance in this fight. And as the war went on, people got really intrigued. Like, who are these people? Why are they doing so well against, you know, what was supposed to be a vastly superior force in terms of numbers? They thought this was going to be over in a matter of days. And as it went on, it just wasn't. How much of that do you think was due to Zelenskyy refusing to flee, refusing to back down?
A lot. I honestly think that if he had left when everyone was telling him to leave, that Ukraine falls. And maybe not the entire country, maybe most of the East, and a good chunk of the country at least is gone. I know there was some talk before the war about potential sort of Ukrainian rump state that Russia would leave alone in the West, and who knows how all that would have played out. But I think Russia's main objectives could have very easily been obtained, and obtained quickly. If there was no president, if there was no cabinet, we saw what happened in Afghanistan.
Yeah.
When the president left, everyone else left.
Yeah, everybody who could got.
Yeah, then they took all the money that they could with them, and they got on the helicopters and they fled. So we did see Russia really overextend itself, and they advanced on multiple fronts, which they were not ready for and supplied for, and really did not prepare for the fight this is turned into, because they thought it was just going to be a matter of days, and they weren't the only ones.
No.
And Kyiv was quickly surrounded. There was quite a bit of talk, and some of it kind of got walked back, but for a while there, it looked like the capital was surrounded. There were plenty of rumors about attempted assassination attempts of Zelenskyy. There were people that were fleeing. There were some talk that people couldn't get out of the capital, even if they wanted to leave, because it was surrounded. And I know I saw it from journalists on Twitter, real people who were there and covering it. And this was not a fringe thing or just something that Russia concocted.
No.
Back at a troll farm. It was bad. I guess it's easy to imagine why he would have fled, and why after he fled, the troops on the front line would have said, what am I fighting for? What's the point? And
right.
I think that sort of thing is not hard to picture, and there's plenty of historical precedents for if the government if there's no government for you to defend, if there's no leader or commander general who's still behind you and organizing everything and working on your defense, working on your supplies and food and everything else, then why would you keep fighting? Even if you love your country and even if you don't want Russia there, at a certain point you pack up what you can, you grab your family and you get out. And,
Right.
and very easily and quickly could have turned into that. But Zelenskyy stayed. And like you said, he made sure that he kept putting out those videos and those pictures so that people knew he was there. It's really me.
I'm
it's
here.
really, yeah.
I'm not going anywhere. Here's me in central Kyiv. I'm downtown. I'm walking around. I'm talking to people. Sorry, didn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
So how much of the skepticism about how he was going to handle this comes not only from the fact that he was an actor, kind of an actor playing a role, a lot of people thought when he got this job, but he had some pretty dodgy advisors around him. Some of the old Party of Regions crowd may have contributed to the perception that this guy's not serious.
Right. There were a lot of questions, and you get we've seen what happens when you elect a comedian or an actor.
Yeah.
An actor who thinks he's a comedian sometimes, I guess. But yeah, when you're dealing with that sort of personality, it's hard to know what's real and what isn't. What's he playing at and what is he really capable of? And I think even the Time magazine piece that accompanied this award said that the war has changed him, that he used to be more jovial and joking and always had a smile on his face and all these things, and the war has hardened him and changed him.
Well, that's not hard to believe at all.
Yeah, but it's not knowable.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even think he necessarily knew that he could become this, but he just decided he was going to do it. And yeah, the people who voted for him, it kind of was a protest vote. It was down in the election. It was down to Zelenskyy and Petro Poroshenko, who was kind of dogged by his own corruption scandals and was not very popular by the end of his term. But he was not in any way pro-Kremlin. He was very much pro-Ukraine, but there were other related scandals about his dealings with oligarchs or corrupt deals that he'd handed out as favors. Some of it real, maybe some of it overblown, but people were tired of the same old, even though it had only been 5 years since Viktor Yanukovych and the pro-Kremlin Party of Regions were really in charge and getting away with every sort of corrupt deal they could, and also refusing to move closer to the EU and instead moving closer to Russia. But people wanted to change, and I think they just kind of, okay, we're going to give this comedian a try. What's the worst that can happen? Which seemed like a really bad idea to me at the time. And like you said, I remember looking at the people that were around him, and several of them were high-ranking Party of Regions guys, and there were real questions about Zelenskyy and where is his money coming from, and what are these people telling him, and is he just going to be soft with Russia? Is he going to give in to their demands? And when you saw his advisors and you saw, okay, this is a comedian who doesn't really get politics, yeah, there was real reason to worry about what the future of Ukraine was going to look like. And then when he downplayed those warnings in late 2021 and earlier this year that Russia's going to invade, I thought, not that much of it is intentional. It's just looks like a guy who's in over his head.
Yeah, like he didn't quite grasp this is a real threat. They're serious. They wouldn't have brought this level of equipment to the front if they weren't planning to do something with it. Yes, we understand they did war games the year before. Yes, we understand they're doing all this stuff frequently and that you don't want to upset people, but this is different. This looks serious. You really might want to think about sounding the alarm at some point. And it worked out.
Yeah, and he talked about, well, we know Ukraine best, and you shouldn't be lecturing us because we're still at war. Because, to be fair, the fighting in the Donbass region of Ukraine with Russian troops and then Russian quote-unquote separatists versus the Ukrainian army, it started in 2014 and it hadn't stopped up till 2022. And so that was still ongoing, and Zelenskyy had some some knowledge, obviously, of that and some experience of what the fighting was going to look like. But it's just an interesting contrast because he was really wrong about about the buildup, about the full-scale invasion going forward. But then the U.S. was wrong about what Russia was capable of. So it worked out. He figured it out. He learned on the job, and he's kept his country in the fight. And now to the point that the aid from the West and the U.S. has increased, and they were able to use that and turn the tide. And he's been criticized as well. He's still playing a part, and he's still prioritizing his celebrity and his status. And
well, I get that, but at the same time, people want something to focus on in a situation like this. They want to have some visual of what's going on here, and that may be the part he's playing. The embattled president of the small, survivor nation that's gone up against the Russians and taken everything the Russians could throw at them short of nukes, and is still somehow standing here saying, come on. And that has inspired.
Isn't that the guy you want to donate to?
Yeah.
Isn't that the guy you want to, send the weapons?
I mean, did you ever see the movie Rocky? It's very similar here. We've got this guy that nobody really gave a chance to in the job, and he's gone toe to toe with, the baddest bunch on the block and still around. Here he is.
Yeah. So I think we have to admit we were wrong about him, and what he's done it's impressive, and it's impressive because none of this was guaranteed. There's every chance not only that Ukraine falls if he flees in the first few days, there's every chance that if he stays, he gets assassinated because God knows they tried, or that maybe Russia had been all that they claimed to be, and then Ukraine loses anyway. So none of this was guaranteed. I can't really picture the odds at this point. If Russia had not behaved so recklessly in the beginning, then again, maybe the war looks different at this point. But there were so many unknowns.
Yeah.
But you have to say that Zelensky's force of will has carried the day for Ukraine.
He rolled some really big dice and came up, with a 7. He definitely had his moments, I'm sure, of what did I get myself into? What kind of crazy shit is this? But give it to the guy. Slava Ukraini.
Glory to the heroes.
Well, actually, no, we're not. We're not speaking of heroes anymore. We're speaking of kind of the opposite. And a move we sort of saw coming, but we were really hoping for everyone's sake this wouldn't happen. Elon Musk's general amnesty of right-wing accounts has found its way to Roger Stone's doorstep like an FBI raid. Donald Trump's longtime advisor is back on the platform after being banned in late 2017, after a series of threats targeting journalists saw his account permanently suspended. This was around the time Stone's longtime business partner and former Trump campaign chairman, Paul Manafort, was arrested in relation to Robert Mueller's then ongoing probe. Stone seems to be reveling in his recent reinstatement, but also worried that old tweets of his may get the account banned again. He's promised to be a good boy this time and is even quoting scripture to prove it. Probably goes without saying that you shouldn't trust Roger Stone, but how concerned do you think we should be about this decision to bring him back?
I think we should be concerned overall because of it. When you start looking at the list of all the accounts that Elon is bringing back, it's some really terrible people. But also, Roger himself is a threat and will use his platform to elevate some of the worst people online and target enemies of MAGA or whatever he's selling that week, and whatever gravy train that guy's rolling in that week. So yeah, it's bad for a lot of reasons, but I think when we're looking at these guys, it's weird to see, but Roger is taking the same path that Andrew Anglin, the neo-Nazi head of the Daily Stormer, is taking on Twitter, where Roger and Anglin both have talked about how they've changed and Jesus has shown them the way and they're not going to do anything against Twitter's new terms of service. And everyone is very quick to thank Elon Musk personally, because they all, and they're probably right, think that he's reading these tweets and just glowing. He loves the adoration, and there's plenty of reason to think that he does, and he reads those and he thanks them for the kind words. But yeah, Roger is a changed man. He's been talking for a while on other platforms about finding Christ, and it's part of their whole movement now is claims to be much more overtly religious, whereas before they just said they were Christian, but then they just went about their day and didn't do anything. But now you see Milo out there
reading his Bible in the plane. That picture with Kanye and Nick Fuentes. Nick Fuentes claims to be a devout Catholic. All of these people have that vibe going right now, and they're saying things like, well, Jesus forgave Hitler, so we should too.
Yeah, that is a thing. That is a thing that they're saying. So I think they've wisened up. It's a game, and they know it's a game. But I think they've been off Twitter long enough that they realize how much they missed it and how much they want to keep it. And Roger Stone is still Roger Stone, and Andrew Anglin is still Andrew Anglin. And now Laura Loomer is back. We got Roger Stone on one day, and then the next day we got Laura Loomer.
On the 12th day of Christmas, Elon Musk gave to me.
She's already getting thousands of likes, and she's just jumping right into the anti-Muslim and Islamophobic rhetoric. She's never left that. So I haven't seen any Jesus posts by her. I know she is Jewish, but if Milo can be ex-gay, then I don't know, what is Loomer religious now, or have you tracked that?
Well, no, I haven't happened to see that. The one thing that struck me as being really interesting is there was an article that got published on Tim Pool's site, on Timcast, where one of his contributors went and interviewed Kanye West, a guy by the name of Cashman, went and interviewed Kanye West out in LA. And Kanye and Nick spent a lot of time talking to this guy, Nick Fuentes, and they were talking about how Kanye very specifically wants to rewrite the Constitution along Christian principles. He thinks that this is a Christian nation. We need to codify that into law. The Jews can live here. That's fine, but they have to act like good Christians in public. They have to go along with Christian values. This is, again, what was coming out of Kanye's mouth in this interview.
With his mask.
I'm sure. But
yes.
This might be the key to the whole thing for them. They haven't stopped being fascists. They've just sort of changed their reason to be fascist. They've now decided that we're fascists for Christ rather than being just fascists for whatever they were fascists for before.
I don't think you're wrong. There's that part of me that's like, no, the Nazis persecuted the church and we're not particularly religious, but no, we're past all that. This is all new age.
We're in some new territory at this point.
New age fascism. And I mean, they are embracing the idea of Christian nationalism. And we saw Mike Flynn doing that too. And he's been on that train with his QAnon and QAnon Light and all of the various dog whistles that he's put out there. But yeah, you have guys like Bannon who have been religious and made it part of their game for a long time. And I think somebody like Bannon, he's got some weird beliefs, but he actually does seem to believe them.
Right.
And a lot of this new stuff just appears to be rather astroturfed and, well, the new talking points are out, so here's what we are going to go and say now. But they really are emphasizing this, and it is interesting. I don't know where it leads. It does make me wonder about when you look at stuff like the evangelicals and how increasingly they don't seem to have a whole lot to do with Christianity.
No, they don't.
So we're increasingly not a Christian nation, and maybe whatever this is going to be isn't going to be particularly Christian either. But it's like whenever they do something like this, whenever they get on some sort of hype train for Jesus now, they're going to weaponize it.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to turn it into some kind of movement. I say all this, and I want to make it clear that I grew up Presbyterian and went to church every Sunday, and I'm not now, but most people that I know and grew up with were very religious, and I have the utmost respect for church-going folk, as it were. And I'm not trying to attack that or belittle that, but what I'm saying is whatever this is, whatever they're doing with this and weaponizing here and turning this into, it's something else.
Well, and this is where I think I'm getting it from, because, I was raised Catholic in a very conservative town that when I was growing up was split about 50-50 Catholic and Mormon. So again, I grew up around a lot of these kind of people, and we had an outfit a little bit north of town in Spokane, group that was at a place called Mount St. Michael's. And they were what one would call Sedvanticists, which are Catholics who don't acknowledge Vatican II. Vatican II was where the Catholic Church modernized. They had a convention. All the bishops from all over the place got together and decided on some new rules. A lot of churches, a lot of folks decided they didn't buy this at the time. So they sort of schismed. And it was not a huge schism. There aren't a whole lot of these people, but there's a few of them in some awfully prominent positions. Like Mel Gibson is probably the number one of these people that you've heard of. And a lot of the stuff Steve Bannon has said, I think one of the first questions I would ask him if I was ever interviewing him is, are you a Sedvanticist? Do you believe that Vatican II was an utter mistake, that we should go back to the Mass in Latin? And the more you start to hear about what these people are saying, that's where I start to find myself thinking, is that where you guys are coming from? Is that what this is? Is that some part of where your philosophy is? Because it does seem like an older version of Catholicism in some really bad ways, what these people are out doing.
Well, we've had anti-popes before, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
we have.
Who is Steve Bannon gonna put up? And well, they have been, and they are. I see this with them, with Posobiec, with people in his orbit, and Bannon, and they are very critical of the current pope.
No, they don't like Francis at all.
He's too woke, and he's too liberal, and whenever he says anything that's anti-right-wing Christian, U.S. Christian nationalist in its viewpoint, it's, oh, well, he would say that. And, oh, well, this is what happens when the church goes woke, and all the things that...
And this stuff, to some extent, when they're saying it, is borderline heresy. I mean, from the strict definition of the word, you are questioning the guy who is the vicar of Christ on earth due to, the way Catholic dogma works.
And they're just trolling him.
Uh-huh.
They're just trolling him like he's just some guy. And it's what they do. It's their default setting.
Questioning the church's decisions are one thing. Everybody does that to some extent. But mocking the Pope in public, that's walking a line.
Right. Shouldn't there be a different bar? Shouldn't that require... Yeah. You can't just treat him like your political opponent or the guy you don't like on Twitter. Shouldn't there be a certain level of respect, especially when you're as Christian as you say you are, which I do think you're onto something there. And I do think that's
why I wonder. That's really why I wonder.
Right. Because they're like I said, Steve Bannon, there's just been enough coverage and stories and history with him.
And like I said, it just kind of reminds me the stuff that when they say tradcath, what exactly do they mean by that? What does tradcath mean to you people? What kind of tradition are we talking about here? How far back are we going? The definition, and, I'm going to go ahead and quote Wikipedia here, which I know is a bad idea, but traditionalist... Have I
seen what they've been saying about Wikipedia on Twitter recently?
Yes, I heard Elon Musk is going to buy that next, huh?
The liberal bias of facts strikes again. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So, just so we're all working from the same definition here, traditionalist Catholicism, tradcath, is the set of beliefs, practices, customs, traditions, liturgical forms, devotions, and presentations of Catholic teaching that existed in the Catholic Church before the liberal reforms of the Second Vatican Council, which was from 1962 to 1965, in particular, the attachment to the Tridentine Mass, also known as the traditional Latin Mass. So, when you hear these guys talk about being tradcaths, that's essentially what they mean. So, the pre-Vatican II Catholic. And that's another whole rabbit hole you could go down in terms of like what that meant. But when they're saying that, that's what they're meaning.
They can't just support anything in its natural current form. There's all they've always got to have a spin. They've always got to
reject modernity, embrace tradition.
we know a better way. It's one of those, like, you see the accounts that are talking about the good, wholesome family of old. We just want to get back to the way things used to be. And it's only pictures of white people with blonde hair and blue eyes, and you see one picture and you're like, oh, okay, and then you see 12 and you're like, oh my god, where am I?
And they used to kick the shit out of Jewish kids by saying, you killed our Lord.
Yeah,
that was awfully common back in the day.
So no, I'm not on board for that.
No.
But they have a certain way of looking at the world, and it sort of bleeds over into every single aspect of their lives and existence. But I went real quick while you were just, oh my god, you wouldn't stop talking, so I had to.
I know, killing it.
Come on, it's my turn.
When am I going to shut up?
It's my. Did you see Kanye on Tim Pool's show?
Yes.
Did you see how annoyed he got whenever anyone interrupted him? That's me every time you talk. I want to make sure all the listeners understand that. Oh God, I'm sorry.
When will he ever shut up?
Okay. So I was curious because I had something in my brain about Laura Loomer. I think I'd pushed it down because she's been so fringe and kind of a joke for a while that I kind of stopped thinking about her, and now I have to think about her again because, I mean, tantamount to a war crime. But here we are. She's so bad. She's just, and she's not even like the most vile or.
No, but she might be the most annoying.
She's annoying. Yes.
She has figured out how to weaponize being really annoying. That's Laura Loomer's superpower.
It absolutely is. So it's a Daily Beast article by Will Sommer, but he's talking about Loomer, and there's this whole story that, God, I just can't get into all of it right now because it's its own show. Okay, Loomer was campaigning when she had a campaign and tried to win a House seat in Florida. She was campaigning with a guy named Stu Peters, and he's a radio host. And apparently there was a quote where he said Laura Loomer is covered in the blood of Jesus Christ. And he said that on Telegram. And then it goes on to say that Loomer told the Daily Beast that she's a, quote, proud Jewish woman, saying she's not sure why Peters said that Loomer had converted to Christianity. Still, she described herself as a supporter of, quote, Christian nationalism. I'm in support of the Christian nationalist movement, Loomer said.
Huh.
She is a supporter of Christian nationalism, but not a Christian, which feels like a weird line and thing that you need to say, but Laura Loomer says a lot of weird things, and honestly, that's not even like the top 100. So we're just going to leave it at that. Again, They draw some weird lines.
Yeah,
they draw some weird
definitely
lines.
Do. Andrew Anglin, actually, in a recent Daily Stormer article, was quoted as saying, Loomer is one of the better commentators now, frankly. I already forgave her for getting my Discord shut down. That was a blessing in disguise anyway. And I mean, it's not like Andrew Anglin is known for being soft on Jewish people or anything. So maybe they have all decided to make Laura Loomer an honorary Christian or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, they'll put up with a lot if it advances the agenda, I suppose.
And this is where their heads are all at these days. This seems to be the line that they seem to be pushing of like this weird Christian nationalist hybrid of any number of things. And it's dangerous. My opinion, I think a lot of other people's, we've got not just kind of the ha-ha jokey online stuff that they're doing, but you've also got people like the Oath Keepers. You've got people like the Proud Boys that are reasonably serious about believing this stuff and taking it into the real world. They had these people helping them with Stop the Steal in 2020, with Roger Stone kind of being the mastermind of all of this. So, one could look at this and think, wow, they're setting up for Trump's 2024 campaign. And, Roger Stone himself, if he manages to stay out of prison in the next couple of years, which is not necessarily a sure thing.
Well, and it could be campaign related or any number of things with Roger. How's his cocaine habit these days? Alleged
cocaine habit.
Alleged cocaine habit these days.
His tax problems aren't alleged. So they may get him.
But he was, you remember how often he was broke though? Every time he was fundraising, it was, I can't feed my cats. My wife.
Meanwhile, his security guard just went up for seditious conspiracy. The guy who was his personal bodyguard at the
but he did nothing wrong, of course. Have they made the t-shirt yet?
No.
I saw a
Kelly
picture.
Meggs did nothing wrong.
One of Loomer's first tweets was a picture of, or God, I don't even know if it was Loomer's or Roger Stone's, but it's a picture, maybe both of them. It's a picture of them together with a Roger Stone did nothing wrong and a Laura Loomer did nothing wrong shirt. And they're, of course, old friends and going to be up to the same old hijinks, getting the band back together. And
they absolutely are.
And Elon Musk just is letting them all back and forgiving past sins, and now they're going to make sure that they're going to keep their Twitter accounts any way they can, and if it means quoting scripture, if it means buying a Bible and and having somebody else point out what verses they should be quoting, that sort of thing, then I guess they'll go and do that so that they can drag people onto other platforms where they can continue to radicalize them and really send them down the rabbit hole. It's not good, but it's what's happening, and it's not going to change as long as the current ownership is there. So we are adjusting to this reality.
We are. So we do have some good news this week. It's not all bad. The Department of Justice, they were busy. They took down Andrei Derkach, who is a Ukrainian national and a friend of Rudy Giuliani, and he was trying to help Rudy dig up dirt on Joe and Hunter Biden prior to the 2020 presidential election. Derkach made multiple media appearances with Rudy back then, including a extremely flimsy 3-part One American News special that tried really, really hard to make something bad stick to Joe Biden, but in the end, nothing did, and OAN's videos got delisted from their own YouTube channel. Why was that? Because Andrei Derkach was indicted for attempting to influence the 2020 presidential election on behalf of the Russian government, with Derkach working as, again, according to the DOJ, an active Russian agent at the time. This week, he got indicted again, and it was for personally purchasing and using property in Beverly Hills, California, in violation of sanctions imposed against him by the Treasury Department. So I got to ask, these guys all hate America. Why are they buying up all the real estate?
Yeah, and in Beverly Hills too. Yeah. He's not messing around. He's not buying a farm out in
Here's
Montana
a little story
or
about
something.
A man named Vlad.
He's going where the action is. Yeah, I'm sure it's a nice little place. I did a quick Google search and it said something about the place being up for rent for $20,000 a month. Whew. Which, yeah.
Well, it's a great neighborhood.
Oh yeah, but what is that in rubles? I don't know.
I don't think.
Do we still accept that? Maybe.
I don't think your calculator counts that high.
Maybe I can find a crypto exchange that hasn't collapsed yet that'll accept crypto rubles. I don't. Yeah, it is interesting. These guys really talk about how much they hate America, but you get like Putin's ex-wife bought a chateau in France, and you've got Lavrov's daughter going to school in the US. And I think one of the things that the Russians were really mad about when sanctions got rolled out after the full-scale invasion started this year is their visas getting terminated, not allowed to travel throughout Europe. And some of that is related to espionage. It's a lot harder to get your agents in major European cities and doing what they do if you can't get them visas. If it's a hassle and those are getting revoked and all this, you're not giving people diplomatic cover and embassies and all the things that normally occur just suddenly go away. So that was part of the whining and the pearl clutching that occurred. But part of it too is that these guys like to vacation in the West, and they'll write their op-eds and they'll go on Russian state-owned TV and talk about the decadent West, just like they did in the Soviet times. But there aren't that many nice places to vacation in Russia. And now part of the benefit of Crimea, of Russia illegally annexing Crimea, was to get Yalta and these other places that are pretty nice vacation spots. But now the bridge from the Kerch
Strait Bridge,
was blown up, and it is passable. Putin apparently got in a car and drove across it himself to prove how safe it is.
I'm sure the Mercedes-Benz company really liked that advertising.
Yeah, nothing. I mean, that just screams safety, security. No. How many boats and helicopters and
oh man,
did they have patrolling?
They had the whole thing just completely blocked off.
Like they shut down the war that one day so Putin could drive across the bridge, but they got their photo op and instilled that confidence back in the Russian people. But yeah, Crimea is not looking as warm and cuddly and safe as it once did for these people. So yeah, they really like their Western vacations. They like to shop in Prague. They like to vacation in France. They like to launder their money in the UK. These are things that they do. So yeah,
and everybody loves going to California.
Sure, California.
Everybody loves California. It's a nice place.
Yeah, it sure is. And there's New York, where you meet lots of interesting people who also happen to want to dig up dirt on Joe Biden and his son Hunter. We just so happen to run into each other. Although, honestly, it makes total sense that Derkach has got this going on, because how does Rudy meet guys like this? Well, after he was mayor of New York, Rudy Giuliani was traveling around the country to Ukraine and Russia for a while, and Kazakhstan and all these former Soviet republics, and he was lobbying. He was finding clients. He was setting up shop in these places and networking, and quite a few of these people were high-ranking or rather wealthy individuals, oligarchs in these republics, who couldn't quite explain where their money came from. And here comes the former mayor of New York, who said, well,
America's mayor.
Yeah, America's mayor knew some guys. And yeah, there's quite a few interesting connections. It's New York. He's from New York. You look at New York real estate and the people who were involved, and when the Italian mob started losing influence, well, they were just replaced by the Russian mob. So yeah, I remember tracking all this 2017, 2018, and you start to put the pieces together on who knows who, and some of these guys that Rudy was working with in Ukraine tried to build a Trump hotel at one point.
Oh boy.
So yeah, there's a guy named Pavel Fuchs who came up a few times in the Trump Russia investigations, and he had dealings with Rudy, and he's one of the more respectable types. Then you start looking at Russian organized crime figures who, like Sam Kislin, who has this long history with Rudy. So of course, Andrei Derkach has money that he probably can't explain, because that's how this usually goes. And he's looking to offload it somewhere. And well, Beverly Hills looks like a nice place. And he didn't just want to launder money. He's not just charged with money laundering. In the actual press release, they say he wanted to use the property.
Yeah.
So despite the fact that he tried to undermine our election, and so doubt and chaos and all this, he's like, yeah, America, that's a nice place to go.
Yeah. Yeah, and he definitely had, a certain visibility in the right-wing media sphere for a while too. He was pushing a second Hunter Biden laptop that he supposedly had access to.
Did he ever find
I
that?
don't think he did.
Ah,
Maybe it's in the
it's too
house in
bad.
Beverly Hills. Who knows? Maybe it got
Maybe
shipped.
it's been added to the original hard drive and we just don't know yet.
Right.
Ah,
Right.
there's so many. Which hard drive and where is it? Is it?
What's his name was saying he had a copy of it too, Poso, I think.
Yeah, of course they all do. Maybe have they started shopping it on eBay? I don't know. Maybe all of us can get one.
Get a bootleg copy of Hunter Biden's laptop.
Yeah, that thing has been tossed around so many times. I know the computer repairman has been making the rounds on right-wing media lately too.
He was on Roger Stone's show the other day.
Oh yeah, that's
Stone
right.
Zone.
That's right. Stone Zone.
Stone Zone.
Yeah. Brought to you by My Pillow, or is
yes, yes, actually. Mike Lindell, so much to answer for.
Indeed. But yeah, it is interesting timing because we have all this Twitter files business dropping, and I don't necessarily think any of that's related, but it's just here's this story that pops up of the guy that was going around with Rudy, and I remember watching that OAN quote unquote documentary in 2020, and it was so low budget, and it was so the graphics were just terrible.
Quote unquote.
Yes,
yeah, it was.
Yes. You have the supposed journalist Chanel Rion, who was an illustrator who decided that being a MAGA media figure and calling herself a journalist would be a good career move, and I guess it was. She got in the White House briefing a few times and made a show of things. And then she's on this quote unquote documentary with Rudy Giuliani and Andre Derkosh, who is promising all this information about Hunter Biden and the corrupt deals and all of the ways that those corrupt deals influenced what Joe Biden was doing in Ukraine, and then that influenced U.S. policy related to Ukraine. And of course, he shows up with a stack of files and documents that it's evidence. It's like Trump when he would show up at press conferences and he's got these stacks of white sheets of paper with nothing
it's
on
just
them. Yeah. What did he really have? Not much.
They went to Office Max right before, and they bought some reams of paper and some manila folders. Stuffed them full.
Yeah. So Derkosh had that going on with OAN, and another of his associates who was also indicted at the same time as he was also doing interviews on OAN with our old friend Jack Posobiec. And again, the topic was Hunter Biden, and supposedly they were always on the cusp of the great reveal of the Biden family corruption. But yeah, this is very much a piece of the narrative related to the Hunter Biden laptop story with the New York Post, and why the U.S. government, why Twitter was concerned that when this supposed data ended up in the hands of Rudy Giuliani, and then he handed it to the New York Post, and people were really skeptical and they wanted to see the data. They wanted Rudy to hand it over to them so New York Times and Washington Post could verify it, and he wouldn't do it.
No.
And so they couldn't verify the story. You had Rudy, who was known to be digging up dirt on the Bidens, who was then found to have been digging this dirt up with an active Russian agent. And then he just so happens to come upon all of this data that Hunter Biden just left at a repair shop. It sounded ridiculous, and it hasn't turned out to be as ridiculous as it first seemed. But if you really think about it, all the pieces, and it looked like they were just repeating 2016 over again. And in a lot of ways they were, but the right wants to tell the story of suppression and all the mistakes Twitter had made. And Twitter has owned up to some of those mistakes and said they did go too far. But you can understand why.
Right. And when I was researching this one today, I ran across an article from September of this year that made me wonder where Derkach is living these days, because I don't think it's Ukraine. It seems that he received at least $567,000 from Russian law enforcement to discredit Ukraine in the international arena. This is according to Ukraine's National Anti-Corruption Bureau. And in June, Ukraine's security service also exposed a Russian agent network allegedly spearheaded by Derkach. According to their authorities, he received funds from the GRU to create private security structures that Russia planned to use to capture Ukraine. And they allocated about $3 to $4 million every few months for that purpose. So I can't imagine he's going back to Ukraine anytime soon because, wow, I don't know what they're doing about treason, but I can't imagine it's nice.
No, I cannot imagine it would be a safe place for him to be right now. But it is interesting that the active Russian agent who was working with Rudy got indicted and caught, and then he went back to being a Russian agent because that's who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like we didn't know, but it's he certainly hasn't changed his spots one bit.
No,
has
he has not. They rarely do. They rarely do at that level.
Yeah, it's one game to the next, and it's one move after another, and until you're no longer useful. And apparently, he's found another way to be useful. So, yeah, I don't think this indictment is related to anything else. I just think it's nice to win one. It's nice to get one of the bad guys, and I mean, it's just funny that of course he's putting money in the United States because he knows this is a better place to live than Russia, and they know that it's part of the game. Hey, it's his job as a Russian intelligence agent is to attack the U.S. and make us look worse and try to break down our institutions.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe let's take a minute to remind ourselves that this was Donald Trump's personal attorney, and they were making documentaries together.
Yes.
So that's Trumpism, and that's why we're against it.
Indeed. Thanks for listening to the Did Nothing Wrong podcast. If you want to hear more, you can go to didnothingwrongpod.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at James, the word 4, and the letter M, all one word, and Grizza BJJ, Grza BJJ, as well as DNW Pod. Thanks again for tuning in, and remember, everyone mentioned did nothing wrong.